Well, Mr. President, I remember when you endorsed me for Congress.
And JR won. He won the race.
You stood behind me when I ran in Ohio, and you stood behind me when the deep state came after me and lied about my military service.
On behalf of our country, I'd like to apologize to JR Majewski because you were treated very unfairly.
I've stood behind you for quite some time, and it's all because I believed then, just like I believe now, that amongst many things, you're the right man to lead this country and our nuclear renaissance. And that's why I'm making this video. Not to attack you. I would never do that. It's because I've spent 23 years inside of the nuclear power industry, on the floor, on projects, at major facilities, and what I'm seeing right now tells me that the people advising you probably have never worked inside of a nuclear power plant. So I'm giving this to you in the hopes that you'd consider it as an open letter from somebody you know, from somebody who's always been there, and from somebody who loves you and wants you to succeed, and like you, wants this country to succeed. Because, sir, if this nuclear plan that you're embarking on goes wrong, it'll set this industry back another 40 years. And unfortunately, I fear that we won't have another man taking the presidency that's like you in quite some time. And we need you to win. Big. Now, I want to start this out by saying what I believe. I believe in your vision. 400 gigawatts of new nuclear capacity by 2050, cutting the regulatory red tape that's strangled this industry for decades, bringing new nuclear back as the backbone of American energy dominance. That's the right call. And history is going to credit you for having the courage to make that call when nobody else would. But right now, I see 5 specific problems that are standing between you, your nuclear ambitions, and actually getting this done. And I know you want to get this done. So I'm going to tell you what they are, and I'm hoping to tell you how to fix them, because that's what somebody who actually has your back and is loyal to you and loyal to this country would actually do. And problem number 1, sir, we don't have the workers to build what you're trying to build. 400 gigawatts by 2050 isn't just an energy target. It's a workforce mobilization on a scale that this country hasn't attempted since World War II. Nuclear construction, as you know, requires some pretty special trades. Iron workers, pipe fitters, electrician, instruments and controls, radiation protection, people who understand the unique demands of nuclear quality assurance. And we can't pull them off a highway project and put them into a reactor building. Can't take them out of a test lab and expect that they would know how to run a commercial operating facility. The training pipeline that we currently have doesn't work that way. And right now, the nuclear workforce is aging. And the people who built the last generation of plants have retired or are retiring. And our apprenticeship programs that trained them, they were gutted during the 40-year construction drought. Mr. President, I know that you want to bring jobs back to this country, and nuclear is the highest paying, most technical, blue-collar workforce in the country. An operator at a nuclear plant earns more than almost any job that's comparable in this country. But we can't staff these plants with ambition. We need a federally supported nuclear workforce initiative, trade school pipelines, apprenticeship programs, funding for community colleges, and partnerships in regions where these plants will be built. And that can't be an afterthought. It has to be a prereq. And if we build the plants and can't staff them, especially staffing them safely, then the plants won't run. Now, I know you know this probably, but problem number 2 is the fuel shortage, and why recycling of spent nuclear fuel is the only real answer. You know we have a uranium problem, and you know we're dependent on foreign nations like Russia. The ban was a start, but we haven't built sufficient domestic enrichment capacity to fuel the expansion that we're planning. So the solution that I see is nuclear fuel recycling. France, sir, recycles 96% of their fuel. We bury ours, or we put it in canisters and call it waste and leave it sitting in dry cask storage at plants across our country because the politics of reprocessing have been too hard to navigate since the Carter admin. But sir, you signed an executive order reversing the Carter era restrictions. And this is the same category of decision. Spent fuel that's sitting in our plants, well, it's not waste. It's 96% reusable, and we're paying for it every year. A domestic reprocessing program of spent nuclear fuel closes the fuel cycle. It reduces long-term storage liability and gives the U.S. true independence from the front end to the back end of the fuel chain. That's the policy that I know you're calling for, and only you have the political will to pull it off. Problem number 3, we can cut the desired red tape without cutting safety culture. And right now, it appears as if the people making those decisions don't know the difference. I hate to say that, but I have to be straight with you, sir. I can attest firsthand that there is a genuine dead weight in our regulatory process at the NRC. Permitting timelines that add years without adding safety, administrative requirements that exist because of inertia from the bureaucracy and not necessity from engineering, those need to go. And I've said it publicly and I'll say it again here, but there's a line, and that line is safety culture. The operating principles that just don't set legal limits, but require the people running these facilities to always push towards the safest possible outcome, not just the legally accepted one. This industry cannot afford to do the bare minimum. When we strip these principles, even quietly, we aren't cutting red tape. We're changing the culture of an industry where culture is our last line of defense. Mr. President, I'm sure you know, but the worst nuclear incidents in American history were not caused by bad regulation. They were caused by organizations that knew the rules and found ways around them because the schedule mattered more than the standard. And I know this firsthand. I worked at Davis-Besse. I lived through the companies operating during the time where they knew there was a problem with their reactor head and they ignored that problem because shutting down was too costly. We had indications, we had the data, and we made the decision to keep running. And when the inspectors finally got a look at it, they found a cavity in the reactor vessel the size of a football. Carbon steel that was supposed to be 6 inches thick had been eaten down to a fraction of an inch. It was held together by nothing but the stainless steel liner. And we could have had a lost coolant accident and people could have died. Now, that didn't happen because the regulations were too strict. It happened because a company decided that profit mattered more than the standard, and because the safety culture that should have caught it had been slowly and quietly eroded by years of production pressure. Again, I was there, I saw it. I know what kind of culture like that will do to an organization. And I'm telling you, sir, the warning signs of that same pressure are present right now in what's being proposed for this build-out. And the companies that are sent to operate these facilities, well, they might not all be bad, but they're new. And some of them are going to face the same pressure. And some of them have already shown a history of not putting the safety of the American public first. And I hope and pray that you do not allow them to tell you that this bureaucracy is red tape, because I've seen what happens when it's gone, and they haven't. Now, this is a perfect segue into problem number 4. Big tech entering this industry. Microsoft has a deal to restart 3 Mile Island and power its data centers. Google signed an agreement for SMRs. Amazon's pursuing nuclear energy contracts. But sir, I am not confident, and a lot of people are not, that their conflict of interest hasn't been addressed. When I think of these companies, I can't help but ask myself, what happens when the company that owns the power purchase agreement is also influencing the operation at the plant? Because we know that big tech runs on uptime. Their entire business model depends on uninterrupted power, and that creates an incentive structure that runs hard and views outages for maintenance and repairs as failures rather than safety. And we have seen this movie before. Again, Davis-Besse, 3 Mile Island, almost every incident, it all stems from companies placing financial interests over plant safety, when safety culture and finance are in tension. Sir, before these deals are finalized and before these contracts are structured, your admin needs an independent framework that ensures that these big tech companies are never in a position where their power needs become operating pressure. Now, problem number 5, and I'll be brief because this one's pretty straightforward, sir. We can't build 400 gigawatts of nuclear power with foreign manufactured components. And right now, Our domestic nuclear supply chain cannot support this build out. Reactor pressure vessels, steam generators, single failure proof cranes, special valves and pumps that are rated for nuclear service. Our American manufacturers who made these components for the last generation of plants, well, they've exited the market or gone offshore because there was no domestic demand. This, I think, is a national security issue as much as an energy issue. Because if we're building nuclear plants with Chinese parts, and some proposed projects have moved in that direction, well, we're embedding a supply chain then to vulnerability into the most sensitive energy infrastructure that we have. Now, we need a domestic nuclear manufacturing initiative with the same seriousness and federal backing as the defense industrial base. We need tax incentives, but that's not enough. We need procurement commitments, but that's not enough either. We need a dedicated supply chain strategy, and we need it now because the lead time on these nuclear grade components are measured in years and not months. I'll never forget what you did for my family, and always carried your endorsement with pride. Still do today. And despite everything I'm saying here, I'll always support you, man. And I can't thank you enough. But I'm making this video because I believe that you are only capable of doing something like this. No president before you could have. You can rebuild our nuclear energy from the ground up. But I need you to hear this from someone who's actually been in the inside of these plants, not just inside a boardroom or have been part of a capital raise or worked for some Senate staffer in DC. Your vision is right. The urgency is right. The politics are right. What isn't right is the plan, or what's perceived as the plan. Because without a workforce, without a fuel cycle, safety culture, supply chain, guardrails, and a clear path with big tech, I fear that we will build the most expensive group of monuments to good intentions that this country has ever seen. And as a builder, I know that's your worst nightmare. You know me. You trusted me enough to put your name behind me. Now I'm asking you to trust me with this. We have to get the execution right. Your legacy and the history of American energy depends on it. And if you need anything, as always, you have my phone number.